Welcome back to Pieces of Miss Minnie. I have the pleasure today of interviewing a very surprising dear friend of mine who turned up in my life sometime last year and is definitely staying, whether she likes it or not. My dear friend, Dr. Cynthia Sutherland. And I will say before I tee the rest of this up, this will be a two-part episode. And this first part in particular is probably going to be triggering to those who are more sensitive to the subject of sexual violence, abuse, family trauma. We're going to get into it because that is what happened. That is the reality of things in a lot of people's lives. But this is not an episode that you watch with children. And if you have any personal sensitivities, I totally understand. Part two will be far more focused on her career and the second half of her life. And that will not be triggering in that respect, at least. And so with that, I'm actually going to let Dr. Sutherland herself introduce herself because her career has been tremendous and staggering. It is frankly above my pay grade. So I wouldn't do it justice. And I know she is far too well-mannered to correct me. And so I'm going to give it to her. And then please, so Cynthia, if you can introduce yourself.
Hello, Patty.
Hi.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. To start off, I am Dr. Cynthia Sutherland, the CEO and founder of Black Crest Cyber, which is a cybersecurity consulting firm for public sector and manufacturing industries. And so I've been in IT and cyber for about 30 years now. And I recently launched my business. Prior to my business, I was the emerging industries lead for Amazon Web Services, where I served as their global automotive cybersecurity lead within security assurance, as well as handling other industries such as media, entertainment, sports, and manufacturing. And so that was a fun time for those 4.5 years. And prior to that, I served as the Chief Information Security Officer, first executive to serve in that role at FEMA, where I served the Biden administration and the Trump administration kind of half and half. And prior to that, I served as the Chief Information Security Officer for the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the Chairman of the Joint Staff. And so it's been an awesome career. I've advised NATO. I was the global chair for NATO, where we led and integrated cybersecurity into military weapons. And then I also served as the UN representative for Amazon, where I advised countries on automotive cybersecurity. So I've done a lot of things in the cyber and IT space, and it has been a fun time.
Yes, I can imagine. In your military career, you went over that very lightly and loosely, but that was substantial. And in part two, we will get into that in far more detail
Yes,
because I think that is the part that fascinates me the most and what I learned
yes.
from you. But that is the second part. Um, why we're doing a two-part is because when I got to know Cynthia, I had a feeling, I think like ducks recognize ducks, that you had a tough upbringing. And then when we
Mhm.
really spoke, I it was, unfortunately, I hate to say this, it was worse than I thought. It really
Yes,
was. And then seeing how far you went against like such ridiculous, near insurmountable odds was just even that much more impressive. Your career alone would have been impressive had you been a trust fund white man, trust fund baby at the right universities and but the fact that things started where you did, and that is a part I think of humans and psychology, and that I keep seeing repeated. It is actually like those of us who had very difficult childhoods and experienced a lot of trauma, and by no means am I comparing myself to yours by any means, but it it really can go two ways. Some people can really get taken down by it, and you know what? That would be understandable. That amount of
yes,
trauma, no one should survive. And so just making it is commendable. But I also see the people who go the other way go so far. They're weird
Yeah,
and, we don't fit in a lot, but like we become such, strong, sometimes extreme, but unique people nonetheless. And I think our lives go in
unicorns.
very unique, yeah, directions. And so with that, not to bring it down, but I think this is a story that needs to be told sequentially. And I think we need to start at the beginning. And
Sure,
um, and so why don't you tell us about how it
sure.
started?
Sure. So I will say that, my past is what made me resilient. And that past includes me serving or surviving a 60-year generational curse of childhood sexual abuse. I was sexually abused from the time I was 3 years old to the time I was 10 years old by four different family members. And as I was going along my healing journey, to find out that it had been going on in my family for over 60 years was in itself astronomical to me, because I then realized that my mom, my grandmother, and my great grandmother, and all the women in my family had been through similar situations. And so to navigate that, become a teenage mom my senior year in high school, to then go to college, dropped out of college twice, and then joined the army to then do 8 years in army and a deployment in Baghdad. That really, when I was going through my self awareness journey, that really made me take a step back and look at how I became who I am today, and how a lot of people say, "Oh my God, like how is it?" And I can tell you, I get this question all the time. How is it you're not on someone's pole? And no, no, no,
No,
bad thing
no, no,
towards
no.
strippers,
Yeah, fair enough.
but how is it that you're not strung out on drugs or things like that? Because a lot of my family members did end up that way. And so to navigate that, I think that it was divine. It was the universe saying,
For
hey,
sure.
there are some things that I want you to do. You're going to become a symbol for others to see, that they can navigate the most unfounded, unheard of type situations to become some of the best things in the world. And so that's where I sit today, to be that person to show people, oh, you went through this. Oh, you can do these things to navigate that and then go on to be some great things. And so I've had so many people that are like, "Oh my God, we're going to be friends for life," because I
Me.
do inspire them and bad news.
I don't care what you have to say about it. You're coming to my wedding. I have to meet a man first, but you're coming.
We're going to get you there. Yes. And that's the thing, right? People ask me, how did you overcome that to, get, find a husband and be whole and have a happy marriage and now have a family and this awesome career? And I tell them, like, look, it is having the right people in your corner. And even though my mom is a survivor, she wasn't like the biggest supporter. It was my friends' parents that were the bigger supporters of me. And so when I got older and I wrote my first book, Letters to My Brown
Yes.
Girls, Four Phases to a Liberated Life Beyond Childhood Sexual Abuse, I invited them to the book launch. And most of them were like,
They
what?
didn't know?
They didn't know. And they were like, oh, that's why you did this. And that's why you stayed at our house a lot. And so then they started putting pieces together. And I had one friend say to me, I feel like I was the worst friend ever in high school. How did I not know this? And I told him, I said, look, you were what I needed in my life. And when his mom passed away, he said to me, I don't know, his mom's name was Elnora. I called her Ma Elnora. And when we moved out of the projects, because I grew up
Yeah.
in the hood,
We'll
then we
definitely,
moved
we
from the
should
hood.
start like, yeah, tell them
Yes,
even just about the housing. When you told me, I was like,
yes,
Christ
yes,
almighty.
yes. So I grew up on a farm, started out on a farm where there were pigs, cows, chickens. Got We had an outhouse, and mind you, this was 78
I
in the
know,
early
not that long
80s.
ago. We're the same age. That
Yes,
like
yes,
I
yes,
was really shocked when you told me that. That I
yes,
was
yes.
like America in the 80s. I assumed we all had indoor plumbing.
No, 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 no. We still were in those
Oh, I'm so
spaces
sorry.
where there were, again, living on a farm in the South. Now, mind you, this is a small town in South Carolina.
Yeah.
And so it was still country. And so living there, then my mom and my dad got a divorce and we moved to the hood. And so we moved to the hood to live with my great grandmother. And that's where all of the abuse started happening. And so we lived there, back and forth with my great grandmother and my grandmother. And then we moved on up from the hood to the projects. And I was
I'm glad
super
we're laughing
excited.
about this. I'm glad you're laughing about this now.
Oh
I'm
yes,
like, God
because
bless you.
because people talk about the difference between the country, the ghetto, the projects, the city, urban, like all of these different things, and I grew up in every single aspect of it. And when I talk about living in the ghetto, where you're living in the basement, where there's dark walls and mildew and things like that, and then to move to the projects where it's beautiful. The walls are white, it's cement walls, and there's sunshine. And that was my perspective. And so it was like, oh my God, I remember loading the truck up and moving to the projects. And I was super excited. I remember grabbing my doll, and it was right when I was starting the second grade. And to move there and have this different perspective on life, that I never wanted to go back to the
Yeah.
hood. I wanted to stay in the projects. And so even living in the projects after a while and going through the trauma there, and especially in the late 80s and 90s when the crack epidemic hit, oh, it was amazing, different perspective on things, where you have the playground, you have the basketball court, but then you also have the needles, you have the drug addicts. And so this is what I grew up with. And so seeing those things and being around those things, now that I look back on them, it's like, okay, that's what made me resilient in these times, especially these times.
How, people talk about the crack epidemic and, I came to America in the like late 80s and,
Uh-huh.
but, I didn't see it. We weren't in, how fast did that happen? Like, how fast did you see it?
Ooh. Um, because my again, we talked about sexual assault survivors. Some of my family members ended up on crack. Like one of my uncles who molested me ended up as a crackhead and shooting drugs,
Well,
and he
that's
ended up.
karma.
Yeah, and oh, it's way more than that. After I got myself out of that situation, he ended up converting to a crackhead, strung out on drugs real bad, stealing, and all these things, and then also uh, contracting HIV.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, like the
yeah,
the stories and the statistics were all there. So it was like obviously
yes.
it happened to real people and everybody's related to somebody. Like did you just see it as like was it just a wave that in a year or two it took over? How long did it take?
It. Ooh, I would say it. I would say about 10 years to see the full cycle, because also what happened was that, yeah, I saw it in in middle school, and elementary school, middle school, and high school. But then I also started seeing my classmates in high school strung out on
Oh,
crack.
wow.
And so to go from elementary school, seeing my uncles and family members do that, to then getting into high school and seeing classmates do that, and some of the prettiest girls
Oh,
just go
yeah.
down that path. And so there were all the signs for me to go down that
Yeah.
path. But what protected me was that I became the project babysitter. I babysat. That's how I stayed
Oh.
away from home.
So you were at the house and then you weren't like
I
running around the streets either.
Nope, exactly. I became the neighborhood babysitter and I babysat for about 8 families throughout the projects.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And so those mothers who are a lot, most of them, all of them were single moms.
Yeah.
And so they paid me. They bought my school clothes. They gave me lunch money and snack money. They let me sleep at their house. Even when I wasn't babysitting, I could just come to their house and sit on the couch and eat snacks with them and talk to them.
Oh, this is what you meant by
That,
supporters as well. Wow. So it was like
yes,
this whole
yes,
like halo community that you had.
yes, 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 yes. And so as a child, one, I'm the oldest of four.
Okay.
And as the oldest, I
Yeah.
have two younger brothers and a younger sister. And so I started out babysitting at an early age, my own siblings. But then it was, how do I run away and get away from this? And I remember the first time I tried to run away from home was when one of my uncles, was making some attempts to molest me, and I was able to escape, and I ran away. I took my teddy bear, and I was running through the back part of the projects into the woods because I was just wanting to escape.
How old
And
were
I
you?
remember,
How
I was about 10, 11 years old. Yep. It So running away, and I remember I got to the fence because they were building a new neighborhood, a new apartment complex. And the fence said, stay out, blah, blah, blah. And I was scared to climb the fence. And so I just sat there and just I sat on the ground at the bottom of the fence and I just started crying because I
Yeah.
didn't want to go
Yeah,
home.
of course.
But then as I sat there, because I'm thinking I'm just about to live in the woods, all these bugs and stuff started crawling on me. I was like, absolutely not. Like I couldn't do the bugs.
That's
I
understandable,
couldn't
but
do bugs. I was still
yeah,
a,
you're
still a
and you're
girl.
yeah, and you were such a baby. I mean, you grabbed your teddy bear. You know,
Yes.
teenagers would
Yes.
have packed a bag. You grabbed a stuffed
Yes.
animal.
Oh
That
yes.
is
Teen years was
heartbreaking.
Yes. And teen years was a suicide attempt. There was a suicide attempt my teen years. When after I left the woods, that's when I really started becoming a babysitter. One of the ladies in the neighborhood asked me, presented to me,
Yeah.
I want you to watch my daughter. And I call her my baby doll because she was the prettiest baby I'd ever seen in my life. And she was so small, and I fell in love with her. And so I was going through and babysitting. And then that's when one morning I woke up and a cousin was attempting to molest me. And he was about 3 years older than me. And so I fought him off, and that traumatized me. And at that point, it was like, okay, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. And I attempted suicide, and it was I'll just by some chemicals in the
Yeah.
house. I'll just
Yeah.
say
Yeah.
that much. And so, but then before I actually went through with it to put it in my body, I thought about my baby doll. I thought about
Oh
her. Yep, I thought about her, and she was what saved me. And I left the house, and I went to her house, and her mom was there. And so I just sat on the floor and played with her, and that's how I ended up just avoiding being at home at that point.
my God.
Yep. And so at that point, it was babysitting after babysitting, and I think the last count, I think I was like at six. I think I babysitted over like 64 kids
Oh my God.
in my
But at least, I
yeah.
mean, you were making money. You were at the house. You had
Yes.
school clothes. Like that is a real blessing, not even in disguise. Um, I know, this whole thing about, so much sexual violence, the majority
Hmm.
of it comes from people the victim knows and often
Yes.
comes
Yes.
from family members, which
Yes,
is
statistics,
completely
statistics.
mental and so against like biology.
It's generational. It's something that it's taught behavior. So for example, I found out that the family members that were doing those things to me were raised to rape and molest women. That's what they were raised to do.
By their
It's a
father, like
taught
where were
by their
their
fathers. By their fathers, and some were actually molested as well.
and their mothers were also victims, so they were not, they were just
Yes.
trying to survive themselves.
Yes, and think about this, Pat Meany. Like we are 53 years in to where women, 53 years ago, think about 53 years ago, a little over 50 years ago, women were actually able to get, like, it's only been 50
Yeah,
years since women have been able to get their own
bank
bank
account.
account without the assistance of a man.
Right.
So when you look back on that, think about all the things that people over the age of 53 or the
Yeah.
moms over the age of 60, 65, what they had to go through to even live, to even just
And
exist.
how abused they were. I remember I saw this interview of some very, very old women, black and white, like, they're almost like centenarians, or, they are. And they had grown up in very poor circumstances, even middle class circumstances. And the saying, it made me so fucking angry. The saying barefoot and pregnant basically comes from the fact that these men would purposely keep them pregnant so they were basically immobile and dependent, and they would take and hide their shoes. That's the barefoot part, so that in the winter they couldn't go anywhere. So basically, they were always locked in the house, but just so they wouldn't escape and try to run off with the kids or anything, the men stole and hid all the shoes so that they couldn't go anywhere because they would freeze to death because they were literally barefoot. And, they weren't even allowed to go to the grocery store. Like, the men would basically, whatever he felt like bringing home, obviously they had no access to money. So the women and the children were just eating scraps. And, the man was off doing whatever the fuck men do, and
Back then, yes.
back then, and I don't know, even now sometimes, like, I'm
Even
not
now.
impressed with them now either. I'm even more underwhelmed. Like, but, that's where the saying comes from. And I remember, and it was like, these women are still alive.
Yeah.
And they said, like, when that law changed, like, the first thing they did was got a bank account and left, and then got on their feet and left their husbands. And I actually remember when we were talking about The Handmaid's Tale. Actually, and I know you haven't watched that, which is like, you're going to watch it right now. Like, as soon as we get off, you're going to start watching it. But you'll see the very first thing that happens in, like, the opening, I think the first episode, is basically the country outlaws women working and closes all their bank accounts. And this is like modern day. So, I mean, that's why, you got to fucking vote and you need to participate. And those of you who are interested in running for any kind of office better do so. Because, yeah, that is literally what happened. It's like, you don't realize, like, how well coordinated and how well planned and thought out. Like, that is a bizarre law anyway. Like, why would you say only half the population's allowed to have a bank account? Like, it's like so much normalized misogyny, so much normalized, like, hatred and violence against women, so much patriarchy that just has, like, no rhyme or reason. It is just violence. It's just another form of slavery by a different
Yes, it
name.
is. Yes. Yeah. Totally
And
agree.
yeah, and that really, I was like, my God, like, that happened like just before we were born.
I know. That's the part. When I take a step back and I look at my existence and everything I've come through, everything my mom went through, because my mom, she attempted to fight and escape her situation. She ended up running away from home at 16. She got married at 16. She had her first child at 17 and never really looked back. And so when I look at where I've come from versus where she's come from versus where my daughter is right now, like my daughter is the first of 5 generations to never be sexually abused. That in itself is a miracle compared to where we've come from. And I'm
And it
very, and
shouldn't be.
my
It
husband,
shouldn't be. You know, we have
it shouldn't
AI.
be.
People are trying to go to fucking Mars. I hope they leave soon. But like,
But it's that is still going on. And even me serving as a CISO at FEMA and finding out and seeing all the reports of all the children that were abused during that time when we were locked into the homes, right, during COVID, and how now a lot of children, not just the abuse, but the neglect from educational perspective, AI is going to create a larger gap than
yeah, and they
we
were
could
already
ever
behind.
imagine. Exactly, exactly. Across America, a lot of children are going to be struggling to just catch up on reading and writing due to COVID and the lack of funding and what they're doing to gut the education system. And so now I look at how do I, as a leader, as an executive, as a parent, how do I navigate this space and help my daughter navigate this space, my children navigate this space? And so those are some of the things that we should all be thinking about.
I think, you know, that you mentioned that. I'm like, there was a lot said about children falling behind in their education, but there was actually not
Mhm.
a lot said about the amount of abuse that was happening. That part was
Yes,
kept very quiet.
yes, yes, yes. It was. And when you take a step back and look at how it happened, I mean, how the elements. So when you
Yeah.
look at the elements of a crime, right? The 4 elements of a crime is a vulnerable target, a motivated offender, the lack of a capable guardian, and availability in time and space. When you have all 4 of them in one location, the risk of sexual assault and childhood sexual abuse is high.
How did, that is a brilliant way of breaking it down. I have never heard of that before. And I work with domestic violence shelters.
Yes, and so that's the routine activities theory. So the criminologists created that back when they were trying to figure out why crime was going up after World War II. And so they found those 4 elements. And so when you talk about reducing crime, you start attacking one or more of those elements, you'll start reducing the occurrence of crime. And so I found that out through my research because I was researching on cybercrime. So people ask me, why is cybercrime so high now compared to back when we had dial up? Well, when we had dial up, you had to dial up to get on the internet.
Right.
And so assets were not available. Now everything stays online all day. And so if it's always available, that's that availability that's high.
Yeah.
The targets, most companies were producing vulnerable targets, whether it's a refrigerator, a laptop, cell phone, router, whatever it is, right? Everything now is online.
Yep.
So that means cyber hackers have constant access to it. So for me, when I don't my laptops, when I'm not using them for work, I cut them off the internet.
Yeah.
I don't connect sensitive laptops to the internet because I don't need it to be online all the time for constant access by anyone.
Oh my God. Um, oh, there's so many
I'm
ways to.
sorry,
No, no,
Patty.
no, no, no. That was even a direction I didn't even see coming. There's so many things want to still get into. I I know. Okay, so since we have talked, and you know, your second book was more about your family.
No, the second book I wrote was because of cyber safety.
Okay,
And it
I
was
remember
written
that.
because of my family.
Right,
Yes, so my grandmother who has Alzheimer's.
right, right, right.
And staying with her, visiting with her, I found out, like, we're most of the time we're active adults. We're out of the house. We don't see what our grandparents and great grandparents are going through when they're at home and they have a house phone or a cell phone. And so her phone number, because she's had it for like the last 40 years, was constantly being called by
Yeah. And
hackers, and
she's
then
like
they preyed upon
answering.
her all day.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so I'm like, really? Like, this is how they come after the elderly?
Yeah.
And so that's what made me write the public safety book and the cyber safety program for the elderly, because they are being preyed upon. And
Absolutely.
me, yeah, me being an executive, uh, at the local, national, and federal level, I see cyber attacks all the time on different targets, but I never really looked at the demographics of individuals, of the public, of people,
Right.
until the FBI actually started tracking it, and I think FBI has been tracking it now for like 7 years. They've even created a whole elder fraud division, and so I said, something needs to be done about this. And so I went to LinkedIn, social media, and asked my fellow cyber professionals, hey, we got to do something. I went to the radio stations. We got to do something to protect the elderly. And so I didn't really see a lot. So that's why I wrote the book, Shielded in
Right.
Dignity.
Right. Right. So we're gonna put a pin in that and come back to that in
Yes.
part two. So I'm gonna rewind us really to your first book, and actually, I remember when we spoke, and what I thought was so brave is that, and that rarely happens, it is accountability,
Yes.
and that you actually did speak to a number of your family members, men and women,
Yes.
and that is how
Yes.
you found out all of this from both
Yes.
sides.
Yes.
And so, as far as you're comfortable, could you tell us
Sure.
how that whole thing happened? What was even
Yeah.
how was it triggered? Because you went on your own healing journey, which I have had
Yes.
to do for my own reasons, and I can understand yours. So, can you tell us about that?
Sure, sure. So I was 6 months into a new government job. I was hired as the new security operations branch chief for the Office of the Secretary of Defense. And in that role, my job was to collapse about 16 different networks into a single network. Now, when you're taking people's money and their people and their assets, people get a little testy. And so I started getting all of the microaggressions, the sexist and racist comments. And then after 6 months of just constantly dealing with it, I broke. I was tired, frustrated. And so I went to a good friend of mine and I told him, I said, hey, I'm leaving the government. And he was like, why? And he told me, I told him, I said, I'm tired of this. Like, if I'm going to put up with this, I can go make twice as much money working in public and private sector and do it. And he was like, no, we need you to stay and take one for the team. And I was like, take one for the team.
What?
Yes. And what we were trying to do, so my boss at the time, she was the first Black female CIO for the Secretary of Defense. And we were trying to create the single IT service provider for the Pentagon. And so they asked me to stay to serve as a symbol to those that come behind me on how to navigate the stuff.
Did they give you
And
a
so I said,
raise for that?
no, no raise for that. But here's what I thought about. I said, I'm going to have to deal with this wherever I go. I need to find out how I'm going to respond to this going forward, because it can't be what I've been through, right?
Hmm.
And so I said, okay, why am I being triggered by sexism and
But I
racism
mean,
so much?
anyone would. But I know where this is
Yes.
going. But to a certain
Yeah.
extent, like if I get it, I've got my backup too. Then I have to put someone back in their place.
Exactly. And you have to, and that for me was, I unloaded because I had not healed from my sexual trauma. My emotions came out when I was frustrated and spilled out onto my boss, who didn't deserve, nor did he even know how to handle it. And so it's like, okay, because he looked at me and he was like, I don't know what to do with this.
Yeah.
And I was like, this would be because, and then he also said to me that I was overreacting. And so that's when I realized I have to navigate these emotions.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay. let me figure this out. So went on my self-awareness journey
How old were you?
and huh?
How old were you?
Oh, this was in 2013, 14. I think 30,
Yeah.
36, 36, something like that, 36.
Okay.
And navigating that, it was okay. I need to go on the journey, but I need to know what happened to me. Because there were so many things on how am I a kid and I'm not protected? What happened? Where were my parents? Who did what? Why did this happen? Why didn't you do anything when I told you what happened to me? Things like that. So went on my what I call carefrontation,
Yeah.
where I'm talking to my family, my mom and my dad, because I want the relationship. I just don't know what relationship would look like. I really care and love my parents, so it's how do I navigate this? And so, of course, at that time, I went to person that everybody always goes to for problems, Oprah. So I watched.
Not anymore.
Not anymore,
Not
exactly.
anymore.
So I was on I was watching the Oprah Network. She had a show on with Ayanna Van Zant called Daddyless Daughters. And I was watching that, getting information, and I fell asleep watching it. And the next morning, I woke up, the TV was still on. And so there was a certain doctor on that station at the time was interviewing some people, and he was talking to some tenants who were talking about how the state of California was giving pedophiles some subsidy after they went through this program, and so they were getting this rent subsidy, and the landlord was stockpiling pedophiles in his apartment building and did not tell the tenants. And so the tenants found out. I see your face.
I have a side story about something like that too that just came to mind, but keep going.
Yes. And so then as they were talking, he brought in a pedophile who had quote unquote went through treatment. And he talked about what the treatment does, the treatment that he had went through. He said that the urges that they get for a child is the same urges that most adults get for the people that they're attracted to. And I know how much I love a man, so I was like, oh my god, like if that's the same urge, then now I understand why they do what they do, because that urge it's a strong urge, it's a sexual tendencies, right? And so I said, I need to really navigate how and why what happened to me, because I still didn't know what happened. So I made my mind up that I wanted to talk to my uncle, the my uncles that did that to me. And so at the time when I started my journey, one of them was dead. The one that had HIV was killed in a freak accident by a pickup truck. And so he fell off the side of a pickup truck as it was turning right, and the back wheels just rolled over him and killed him. So it was kind of a freak accident, so to speak. And so that left me with three others. And one at the time, I did not know who it was because I just remember the images in the night. The other ones was in jail, and another one was alive, and that was the one I wanted to go talk to. And so I made my mind up on how do I do this in a manner that allows me to still be safe. And so I flew to South Carolina, got a rental car, drove to the house, and we were outside talking, and I told him that I remembered everything that he did, and so we had this conversation, and he denied it, but then he made statements as if, well, why are you bringing this up after all these
Yeah, of
years?
course, because it's
Yeah,
the truth.
that conversation, exactly. And so um uh talking to him and letting him know that I remembered what happened, and how at this point in my life it was time for me to move on from the pain and hurt. And I just wanted to let him know that what he did to me, regardless, did not kill me, did not, make me, did not kill me. And so moving on from that, it was now having the conversation with my dad and my mom, because I told my mom and I had originally told my dad, and so I wanted to
And
know
this
their
is your
perspective.
biological father or your
My
stepfather? Okay.
biological, my biological father, yes. And so my biological father, we had that conversation because I met him when I was in the first grade,
Because your
and
parents split up early, right?
yeah,
And
well, yes,
and your
yeah, my
mom
parents
left
split up.
because she was in a similar situation with him?
Yes, yes, yes. So my mom left home because she was being sexually abused, but then she met my her husband at the time, and so she left her husband, which was my adopted dad at that point. She left him due to domestic violence. And so seeing that and experience not only the sexual assault trauma, but also the domestic violence, I've seen all of it. There's nothing I haven't seen. And so to navigate and talk to my mom and my dad's about that, it was an emotional journey for all of us. But lessons that I learned were that um, traumatized people have to navigate their trauma, or it will bleed
Yeah.
into onto their children. Period.
Yeah.
Hands
And
down.
it will
Right.
haunt you for the rest of your life. You'll never escape it.
Yes. Yeah, exactly, exactly. And so, and then talking to my biological father about me, it was that, he didn't find out about me until later. And even then, he acknowledged that he was a young, dumb guy and just didn't handle it the way a man should have. And he acknowledged that. And I know that he's completely changed because I've seen how he engages with my stepmom's grandchildren and her children. So I've seen how he's changed so much, and I'm super proud of him and his and how he's matured over the years. And so we reconnected, but we had to have that conversation because I wanted to hear from him his side of the story.
I I'm actually curious about your mother's side of this story because a lot of this
Yes,
was on her watch. And
yes,
I
yes,
get
and
that
so
circumstances were tough, but it was still on her watch. Like, how did she react and what was her role in it? And
sure. So my mom's role was after me telling her what I experienced. He because my uncle was living with us at the time, and so the first thing she did was remove him from our life. Well, from the house, I'll say that much, from the house, and due to the fact that she was trying to get her life together, working and getting jobs, she relied on the assistance and support of aunts. And so, whenever she wanted some time, downtime, club time, she would take me and drop me off to aunt's house. And my aunt is where evidently my uncle was living. And so it continued there because my aunt was a great, great aunt. Great, I mean, old aunt. She was one of those aunts that had the quilts and about 50 quilts and blankets on the bed that when you laid on the bed, you just sank in. And then when she put you under the cover, you couldn't
it's like
move.
Princess and
Like
the Pea.
she was one of those aunts. She was one of those aunts. And so going over there and having to experiencing that there. And again, I don't know what the I can't speak to how their experience was with all of this, but I know when I started navigating my healing journey, a lot of my family members did not like
Yeah, of
it.
course.
Um,
The shame and why are you
the
talking
shame,
about this and you're
exactly,
fine and
exactly.
nothing really happened. It wasn't that bad. Because then it also brings up either what they have done or what they have endured, neither of
Or what they,
which, anyone is
yep,
proud of.
yes, yes, yes. And so I've had to, because that was primarily all of this generational curse was on my mom's side. And so navigating that side of the family on the healing journey was a challenge.
Yeah.
But I had a support system within my husband and my friends. And so they were, as I was navigating, and this is what I talk about in the book, as I was navigating each aspect of it, It was going to and talking to my friends. And when they found out, they were like, oh my God, how did I not know this? Or how, like,
Yeah.
coming to them. And I remember one friend, she said, why didn't you tell me
Yeah.
when we were
That's
in high
actually a better
school?
question.
Yeah. And so I said, what would you have done? I said it was over by the time I was in high school. At that time, I was embarrassed and
Yeah.
by everything I had been through.
Yeah.
I didn't want anybody to know what I had been
And I
through.
mean, you
No one.
report that, and it's like, unless there's like, you get taken by social services, you end up in
Yes.
foster care. That's
Yes.
another
Yes.
dangerous
Yes.
proposition.
Yes.
Like, let's not kid ourselves about foster care is like one of the heart and centers of human trafficking, particularly for girls, and the amount of abuse that goes on in so many homes.
Yeah. And I will say that I did not want to expose myself nor my siblings to that.
Yeah.
I like I said, I have three younger siblings, and so it was run away, just not be there. And so finding outlets, my outlet became education, babysitting, and education, school.
Yeah.
And so when I got to school, the basketball coach was like, "Hey, I know you don't want to play basketball, but do you want to manage and work on and participate on the team for credit?" And I said, "Sure." And so I ended up working as the basketball manager for the team, and that's how I met my best friends.
That's amazing. I mean, that is so lucky, like that you had, people like that that just
Oh,
came out of nowhere. It's like that's divine intervention. Like there's
oh, let
no
me tell
other
you.
explanation for.
Padmini, my middle school principal, she was my saving grace. It was I will hands down put it on my middle school principal because when I left elementary school at sixth grade to go to middle school, living in the projects, being a nerd, and not having the most expensive name brand clothes,
Yeah.
running around barefooted, things like that, I got picked on a lot. And so when I started middle school, it was like, I'm middle school, I can be a new kid, I don't need to be a nerd anymore. So I started skipping class. I started just hanging out in the hallways. And the middle school principal, Dr. McFadden, I never forget it, she caught me in the hallway and she said, Cynthia, I'm seeing you too many times in my hallway. She said it very loudly. And so I was embarrassed. And I said, okay. So I said, I'm going to go in this other hall. She's not going to catch me over there. I went over to the other hall.
Why are you trying to outsmart this woman? Like, you already lost.
I tell you, she
It's okay.
said,
I've had my phases too. Don't like.
exactly. Like we all go through it. And
Yeah.
I'm like, she's not gonna catch me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so next thing you know, she caught me and sent me straight to her office. And I'm sitting there waiting, like, oh my God, I'm about to get suspended. I'm in trouble. And then she walks in the office and she says, come to my office. So we walk back to her office and she pulls out, she had my files on her desk. She had been watching me and went back to look to see how I was looking, what my grades looked like in elementary school. And she saw that I had good grades and she said, I'm not going to let you do this to yourself.
Yeah.
I'm not letting you go down this path. She said, now, so then she, after she went in on me, because I came from a elementary school where you got paddled. So when I got to middle school, I thought
That
I was
was
going to get
legal?
yes.
I'm always like, I don't understand anything about this country. I know I've been here for a while, but like, what?
Yes, I came from an elementary school where you got paddled.
And this like in the 80s?
This is in the 80s and into the early 90s. I went to middle school. I got to middle school 90 91. I
Yeah,
think it
yeah, yeah.
was. Yeah. And so coming from that school or Mr. McGahey paddle and then going to middle school, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know
Yeah.
anybody in middle school. And so I'm thinking I'm about to get it. And so, but then she says, go around to the guidance office and tell them I sent you. And so she sent me around to the guidance office, got in there, and there were these women that I told them that she sent me. Next thing you know, I have a whole new family. They're sending me like, you can go to college, you can do like I never thought I could go to
Yeah, I
college. My
was gonna
mom dropped out of
ask you,
school.
I'm like, what kind of kid were you?
Oh, didn't think about college. My mom dropped out in sixth grade. So I never thought I could go to college. Yeah, my mom dropped out of school in sixth grade.
So then,
It
if
was
you didn't think you could go to college, why were you such a good student? You were a nerd, though.
exactly, it was getting away from house. Getting away from I just it was just I read books and I remember I don't know if you remember the Book It program that Pizza Hut used to have where you could get so Pizza Hut used to have this Book It program where if you read 5 books and get 5 stickers, you get a personal pan pizza from Pizza Hut. And I was hungry and loved pizza.
Yeah.
And so I read and I always got all the bookets because I was always wanting to go get my personal pan
I
pizza
mean,
from
five
Pizza Hut.
books. Not. I mean,
Ah,
it's crazy. Like you think about even the people who thought of that campaign. Would they have ever known? They probably did it. And there's so many things like this. The small details that stick out that changed your life. I have my own, but it's like think about like did the marketing team at Pizza Hut ever think that like something as small as like oh let's get kids reading more would actually be a motivation to save kids from sexual violence or whatever was going on at
read
home. It's
books. Oh yeah,
actually
read.
like it's so profound like
Yeah.
the small like details or decisions and I
Hmm.
do want to talk about I guess this is a good intersection to talk about you said you got pregnant at 17, which I was very
Hmm.
surprised about. So I guess it's kind of like middle school into high school. Like
Hmm.
were you a very serious student in high school at that point? Did you know you had college potential?
Yes, one of my favorite TV shows is A Different World. I don't know if you've ever
Yeah,
seen
of
that TV
course.
show.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like I wanted to be Dwayne Wayne so
Yeah,
bad,
yeah, yeah. He
and
was the coolest.
he was the coolest. He was the. I love Kadeem Harrison in that TV show, and so he was the coolest. And when I got to know my dad, I also found out that he had a baby sister that was an electrical engineer.
Okay.
And so that's when I said, okay, I want to be an engineer because I wanted to be like my aunt. She
Yeah.
went to Clemson University. She went to go work for Philip Morrison and some more things. And so I'm like, okay, I know someone that actually went to college in my family. And so that's what made me say, okay, I want to go to college between that and just getting away. And so what got me was that my 10th grade summer I went to my first sleepaway camp at Clemson University to study engineering, and it was like, oh my god, I got this bug now. I can go to school like and actually stay on Clemson's campus for like I think we were like 2 weeks or a month, something like that, but it was awesome. And so I was like, okay. But then I go back to school, and at the type of student that I was a nerd. Like I was in the honors and the CP classes, and also working on the basketball team, doing management on the basketball team. And then the boys basketball coach fell in love with me and asked me to do the same, run the books for the boys teams. And so doing that, so I was all into school
Yeah.
because it was my escape space.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
literally, I would leave home and not come back home till like 9, 10 o'clock at night.
Wow.
Like I would stay gone, and if I even left school early, I would go hang out with my friends just to avoid going home.
Yeah.
And so that was what kept me along the way. And plus, and then also in some instances, I was still babysitting in some instances. And so then my last set of twins started school, started Head Start. They started Head Start. And I was like, I don't have any more babies to babysit. And I started feeling that change in that pool that I wanted my own baby.
And how old were
And
you?
I was 17. 17. I was, yes,
You
17.
wanted a
Young.
baby at
I
17 and
did
you also
because
wanted
I
to go to
wanted some
college?
no, I wanted something to love me.
Yeah. I think that's why a lot, like, there's actually a lot of girls who age out the foster care system. They get pregnant very, very early. And a lot of that is the lack of family and then wanting someone to love and someone to love you. And that is like a highly prevalent statistic.
Oh yes, oh yes, and I remember when my mom told me that's why she had me, and I was like, it was a generational thing,
Were a lot of
and so
girls at that time, were girls getting pregnant in high school? It was normal.
I had friends that got pregnant sixth grade, seventh grade, eighth, like all the
I
way
know it
starting sixth
happens, but
grade.
it's like I still can't. In that respect, I grew up so differently that like I cannot wrap my head around that at all. I mean, to this day, my mom still, in her own polite way, basically tells me like I'm not cut out for motherhood. I don't disagree. I mean, she's right, but like like this has been her line the entire time. Like, she's like, it's not for you. I'm like, I agree.
I tell you, like I tell people, I've been babysitting kids so long. At this point, my daughter, she's now 14. I'm done. I'm
Yeah,
so done with
yeah.
kids.
So this was with the boyfriend, and you did it
Yes,
on
with my
purpose, or just
boyfriend.
like lack of protection? Obviously, it's going to
No,
happen.
it was intentional. He and I talked about it. Yeah, we talked about it, and yeah, we were. He was. I was. I was entering my senior year, and he had already graduated high school, and so it was a conversation, and it it yeah, it changed. I had came home because I was, matter of fact, I had came home from summer camp for 4th of July break. And then I ended up getting pregnant on that 4th of July break. And then went back to camp, back to summer camp at Claflin University down in Orangeburg.
And you didn't know you were
And
pregnant, or you did?
nope, I didn't know. I did not know until I started my senior year in high school, and it was like September, October timeframe. And I had just started working at Pizza Hut, actually.
The pizza is that good. Apparently,
Pizza that
I mean,
good.
it was
And
good
I
back in the
start
day. That was like that and Domino's was the stuff. Like,
exactly,
yeah,
exactly. And I remember one day I was like, because normally I was like, I love Pizza Hut. I grew up on Pizza Hut in the bucket. And so I went to go eat a pizza, and I smelled it and I vomited. And I was like, what the hell is wrong with me? I love pizza. How could I not like pizza?
yeah.
And went and talked to my friend. Um, and she and I went, she was like, I think you may be pregnant. And we got a pregnancy test, and I was pregnant.
Were you
And so then
happy?
scared. I
Yeah.
was scared. I didn't know what to
I mean, you
expect.
weren't old enough to make that
No,
decision. Like, no
exactly. I
decision
wasn't.
like
'Cause
that should be trusted on a teenager. Like that, like
exactly.
your brain is like still silly putty.
Exactly, exactly. And so at that time I was 18 because my birthday's in July. And so I turned 18 by that time. And so now that I'm 18, a senior in high school, I was a senior in high school. I was an AP calculus student, and I was also in freshman college, freshman English.
Oh wow! So you were actually on a fast track,
I was on a fast track. I was on a fast track.
and
And
then
so I,
yeah. So
so
take us through. Like,
then,
you actually still got into college.
yep, I got into Clemson University, and but I still had my son, and I was not giving my son up. And so took the SATs, made a perfect score on my math SATs,
Nerd,
like
nerd.
nerd, exactly.
I did not.
And
Although my math score is always higher. Like,
yes, and so it was navigating that. And then when I told my parents, I wasn't scared to tell my parents. I was scared to tell my pastor because I had joined the
oh,
church.
yeah,
I
yeah.
was heavily involved in the church. My friend's mom, my Elnora, I was scared to tell
And they
her and my
probably
pastor.
saw that you were a high potential kid. So
They
you were
did.
gonna, they knew like if someone's gonna break out, it could be, it should be you.
Yes, and my Elnora was that person. She stood by me through the whole thing. I mean, even before my son and we had moved out of the projects into a house, She lived up the street, like 2 blocks up the street. And so when I would have night terrors, nightmares, or feeling real bad, I just walked to her house and I would just be there with her. She'd talk to me, we'd laugh. And then my friend, her son, who I was actually in, he and I were in class together. He was a football player. He's a huge football player. So whenever I came there, he was always just laying on the couch watching football because he had been to practice or whatever. And so he and I really didn't talk that much besides, hey, what's going on?
Yeah.
How's the team? Blah, blah, blah. Now right now, he's my brother. He's like the bestest friend. And, you know, his mom was my saving. She was
Yeah.
my angel on earth. Her and then my pastor, Pastor Posey, he was that father figure that I needed. And so he helped me navigate my emotions. They helped me navigate my emotions through that. My mom was like, okay, this is how we're gonna do this, because she had me on her 18th birthday.
Wow.
And so yeah, so she was like, okay, we're gonna navigate this. And so when I had my son and I needed to finish high school, my mom had decided to go back to school to get her GED when I was in my senior years. But then when I got pregnant, she dropped out of her GED program to take care
Oh.
of my son so that I could graduate high school.
It's amazing how, those small decisions take us through college, and then we'll, restart on part two. But take us
Yes.
through that, because that was an inflection point that I thought, if you didn't pick yourself up, like, it was over.
Oh, yeah. Starting college, I was a number one. I graduated high school on a Wednesday. And when my friends were going to senior week, I was preparing to start work at Freightliner as an intern on Monday. So I went straight from high school graduation to working. And that job was a summer internship. And so I ended up going to University of South Carolina in Spartanburg, and that was like a 30-minute drive from my hometown. So I moved out. Me and my son moved away from my mom. Moved to a neighboring town. So it was my first apartment. I had no financial literacy, so I had no clue about how money worked. I just knew you got it and spent it.
Oh,
That's
man.
all I knew.
Yeah.
And
But I
so,
mean, you weren't
uh,
getting that much to begin with. So it's like,
exactly.
don't act like, if you're on like minimum wage, like you've got the bandwidth for like stocks and bonds. Like,
Nope.
like that's
Exactly.
not
None
how
of
the
that.
real world
None of that.
works.
None of that, exactly. And so I moved out. So it was my first kid, my first apartment, my first year in college, all of that at one time.
You were so young.
18,
And then
18.
I know you had an incident, your car, and that could have
Yes,
like derailed
yeah,
everything. Which,
it did.
this is why I'm like, something so small can be literally, almost literally, life and death for your future, at least in your family.
Yes, yes. And so I was driving on the street and there was an El Camino in the middle lane and I was on the far right lane. The El Camino, which as you know is a one row, one seater, right? One row seats. And it was big, three obese people. So the driver couldn't see their side mirror.
Oh
And
my
so they
God.
came and rammed me on the right side.
And that was your
And
only mode
so
of transportation.
that was my only mode of transportation in a city where I didn't know anyone.
Yeah, and probably didn't have public transportation, so your
And no,
options were
didn't have
limited.
exact did not have public transportation. And so it was a struggle getting one. I learned how insurance companies work for uninsured and underinsured
Yeah,
individuals,
yeah.
right? And so it was a lot to learn. And so not only at that time was I leveraging, I was also on welfare because again I couldn't make enough money to take care of me and him. I barely had an education, and so I was on welfare. I was a student, so I got daycare vouchers so that my son could go to daycare while I did go to school. And then I also had a work study job in the athletic department, doing working on the basketball team, doing the same stuff I did in high school. So it was all that work, all that school, and then my son being in daycare. And so he struggled with his development because all he did was go to daycare and home. And all I did was go to school and home. And so it was just a lot of that. And so when the accident happened, it really impacted my ability to go to school. So I dropped out of school the first time. Um, and
Because no one, you
so,
said no one in your family helped you with that.
no, they
That
couldn't, no,
is
they couldn't help me.
batshit crazy to me.
It couldn't help me. It couldn't help me. My, yeah, no one in my family could help me at that point in time. I was like, not anyone that was willing to help. I'll just say
Right.
that much.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
I was very frustrated because I saw my cousins who were having three, four, five, six, seven children, and people would watch their kids. But then when I'm trying to go to school, I can't get assistance from any of them. It was very frustrating. But what I realized is that they were trying to save those children from their moms. They weren't, my son was like, they felt that he would be okay with me.
I know, but it's
But
like, something like car repairs literally caused you to drop out of school. And the like
yes,
difference of trajectory that your life could have gone and then your children's life would have gone and everything.
yes,
The type of man you would have ended up with, like the type of career
yes,
or you could have just been like minimum wage the rest of your life. Like,
yes, yes,
something like that. Like it's not small, but it is. That like
it
that would have
is.
changed the trajectory of your entire life.
Yes, and what helped change the trajectory of my life was my friends, my girlfriends. They had flunked out their first year, so they all came back home to go to the local community college, get their GPAs up, and then go back off to school. And so they came home, and they were a huge support in helping me get back on my feet. And so I end up moving back to my hometown, and they supported me through the journey where I'm working. I had to get a third shift job, and my friend, who she got a third shift job, but she was also going to school, so we would go to work at 11 p.m., get off at 6 7 a.m., then she would leave and go to school. I had my son, so I just needed money to survive. She didn't have kids, she needed it to make her way through college.
Yeah.
And so she's gone, she went on. She's an accountant now, and she's a still very good dear friend of mine. But it was my friends that, again, that really helped me. And so I moved back into the projects, me and my son. And so at that time, it was like something has to change.
And was your
I
mom
can't.
there? Was she helping?
No, again, my family could not support me. So it was, how do I navigate this? Because I know that I'm supposed to be doing something different with my
Yeah.
life. And that's when I made the decision that I needed to join the military.
So I think that is a perfect intersection for us to end part one.
Hmm.
And I think that is, um, I wouldn't have wished that experience on anybody. And I'm so sorry. I'm so, so sorry to you and anybody else. You did not deserve that.
But I will say this, Pamini, it's what make people resilient when you have not just have the right people, like having people like you or friends like you that are motivators, right? They say, show me your friends, I'll show you your future.
Yep. Yeah, yeah.
And that
Absolutely.
is my life.
Yep.
My friends, my girlfriends, and two of my homeboys, like three of my homeboys, I can't imagine where my life would be right now
Yeah.
without them.
No, no, no.
Because
I
even when
understand.
I had my son, he was a preemie, and my best friend's parents bought his car seat, his crib, and his first set of clothes. It was my friends.
Yeah. No, no, no. That you had some serious protection. That's all I can say. Some
Ooh, who you
serious,
telling?
serious, serious protection. So, um, well, those were the bad years. And, even though the next half of your life was complicated, I think you were definitely on a very, very steep trajectory. And so With that, thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, for joining us for part 1. And stay tuned for part 2. Take care.